Now, you'll see my setup here is set very specifically. What I've done is I have my perspective window here. This will be where I'm animating from, as usual. I have my shot camera up here with the framing that I want. And then I've created a secondary camera, or a tertiary camera, I should say, down here, which is basically going to be my zooming camera. And this is something I don't always do, but it's essentially a copy of my shot camera that I can use the 2D pan and zoom and get into the fine details of things, while I can still look at my actual shot camera, the thing that the audience will see. The reason this is important is it's very easy to start zooming in here and then going in here really close, and let's say I want to start shaping the eye, and you start shaping it very subtly because you're really close and you can see all these little details. But from a distance, you don't see any change. Like if I'm moving this, do you really see much of a change over here? Not really. So by having this, it allows me to kind of get an idea of what the audience will see while also getting the detail work. I don't always do this, but depending on the shot, and especially for subtle shots, I find this to be pretty helpful. Especially when you start closing out the outliner and stuff, you can just maximize your workspace. So with that, the next thing I like to prepare is just a base key on the character. So I'm just going to take everything, set a key. This way we can always reset the character back. If you have a GUI picker, you can use a GUI picker if it has a reset option. But in general, I like to have a default pose. That way, if we're starting to like really scale up the eyes and like move things around and do all sorts of weird things with the rig, we can easily just boop, set it back. We're good to go. I'll even do this with like longer animated shots. And what I'll essentially do is I'll have like negative frames. So I'll have the timeline go to like -10 frames, and I'll just put a default frame on -10. That way I can always like go back to it and reset a pose if I need to. So let's see. Now there's a question here. When will the next gaming stream be? That I'm not sure. I would like to do it, but my setup kind of got changed up, so I have to reset up the gaming stuff. But I've been wanting to do a few new gaming streams so that we can do the animation from Crash Bandicoot and Spyro. Those two games I've really wanted to play and just analyze the animation of, as well as a few others. So someday, but it depends on when I can get the setup working. And then Zuku, are the AM rigs normally at smoothest 1 or 3? By default, the AM rigs are set to smoothness 1, but if you select the root control, which is the big control at the base of the character, you can adjust the smoothness in there, and it'll set the smoothness to high, or to 3. It's basically a toggle in there so you don't have to select the geometry, which is very nice. So just select the root control, set the, I think it's resolution to high, and that'll upgrade the resolution on your rig there. Now, a few other things I like to do, talking about resolution, is when I'm doing facial animation, especially when I want to do subtle stuff, I will set my resolution to a high res resolution. So everything's nice and smooth. By default, the Apollo rig, I believe certain aspects of it are in low res. So if I do this here, you'll see I'll select the geometry and set it to 1. The hair is a little rougher. The big thing that I noticed when I was using the Apollo rig, at least, is the teeth are soft by default. So what I mean by soft is, notice how there's kind of this, I don't know what the right word would be. Like there's the kind of weirdness to the teeth, just a little bit, especially when you go back here. They feel a little blocky and strange, especially when you get up close. From a distance, you're never going to notice. But if you take the rig and just hit the 3 key right here, and then let's do this as well. You can see, especially on the eyes, it's just a little cleaner, a little bit more detailed. So especially for eye stuff, this helps a lot with certain rigs. Certain rigs have really bad nickeling on the eyes when they're in low res. For anyone who doesn't know what nickeling is, it's when you can see the facets, the edges, and you get this really sharp, let's do this here, just line, 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 like that, instead of a smooth curve. So smoothing out the rig can be very, very nice. Oh, and why not Jak and Daxter, Ratchet and Clank instead of Spyro and Crash? Jak and Daxter, I would definitely do. It's an older game, so the animation isn't as like polished as the new Crash Bandicoot and Spyro games. But I definitely want to do that. And Ratchet and Clank, we've never actually played Ratchet and Clank. We have the games, but we've never had a chance to play them. We played a little bit of the beginning of the first one, and that's it. So once we play them and have a chance to go through them, I would definitely love to. And maybe the streams would be a good excuse to do it. Yeah, Zuku, if your animation's lagging when you put it into high res, definitely put it into low res. High res can definitely slow things down, especially certain rigs. They can really bog things down. So lowering that can help a lot. Also, making sure your resolution in the root control is set to low, and that you're not using like high res textures and stuff like that as well. Okay, so what are a few other things that we can set while we're setting this up? Well, one thing I also like to do when I am getting ready for pretty much any facial animation, not just facial tests like this, but any facial animation that is not on a studio rig. Studio rigs, you kind of have limitations on what they want you to show and how they want you to set things up. But if I'm doing my own shot, one thing that I really love to do is change the mouth interior, the inside of the mouth. You can see right now that when you open the mouth, it has a fleshy color. It's the same color as skin, essentially. And, okay, the Apollo's Rig's mouth controls has keys on these controllers in the original file. Ooh, interesting. That's a good thing to note. Low lip out. Oh yeah, no wait, those are my keys. Low lip out. Okay, I'm gonna keep that in mind here. Okay, this one. Okay, we'll watch out for that. Anytime a rig has existing keys, you have to be careful. But going back to the mouth, by default, rig mouths will have one of two things, kind of a darker inner color, which is nice. It helps kind of push the contrast from the outside to the inside a little bit. Or they will just have the same color as the outside skin. And I personally don't like that because you don't see any contrast in the face. And especially when you pose out the mouth, it becomes very hard to pose out. If you actually look at like my mouth as I speak, the inside of my mouth, you see the teeth, you see the tongue, like that. But do you see the inside cheek? No, it's black. There's enough shadow in the mouth typically that you're not like shining a light in there and seeing the inside of the mouth. You're not seeing the back of the throat all the time unless you really put a light in there and like angle your head just right to look down someone's throat. So for me, this just kind of makes it harder to pose things out and to see that nice contrast between teeth, tongue, and the outside of the mouth, the silhouette. So what I like to do is I'll take the rig's geometry here. Now with the Apollo rig, you just take your display layer, set it off of referenced. For the AM rigs, you would select your root control and set the body selectable to on. For other rigs, you kind of just have to figure out. Every rig is a little different. But I'll select the geometry. I'll select the faces inside the mouth. And the way I do this is I'll just kind of select the face deep into the throat here. So I'll select one face, hold down shift, double click on the next face beside it to select an edge loop. And then hold down control right click, and then hit grow selection. So what that does is it takes your selection and selects the next edges next to it. And then I can hit G on the keyboard, as in gorilla, to repeat that command And I'll just keep doing that until I get to the edge of the mouth right around there. Somewhere where it's like right before the lips. This way I'm not accidentally affecting the lips, but I'm not seeing like some rim depending on like the view over here. So with all of this selected, I'm just going to right click in the viewport, go to assign favorite material, and I'm going to assign a surface shader right here. Surface shaders are pure color. And by default, it comes in black, which is what I want. And now we have this. So let's set this rig back to referenced mode so we don't accidentally select things. And there we go. Now you have this nice, crisp, clear mouth shape. And especially from a distance, you can see how that just makes the mouth stand out a lot better. Is this necessary? No, you don't have to do this at all. But at least for me, I feel it makes things look better and feel better as I'm animating, especially when you're doing like something like this where the mouth is narrow. You get that really nice sharp contrast. I wish all rigs had this. Yeah, it would be nice. The reason they don't is for rendering. So if you're going to render the shot, it's kind of a pain when you have to select the mouth and then reapply a skin texture. That usually ends up being more work in the long run than putting a surface shader yourself. But I would agree, it would be nice by default if rigs kind of had a darker material in there, especially for a lot of people who don't render that. So yeah, it's kind of a balance. What's easier for the animator versus what's easier for the pipeline. And in general, it's not hard to just do this and then you're good, versus trying to figure out, like if I had to put the skin color in here, let's say we select it and okay, let's actually select the skin. We select all the inside of the mouth. I'll just do this. And now I have to assign the skin texture. Well, assign existing material. Which one is it? Let's actually move this higher up here. So is it the material for the skin? Probably. Now in this rig, that's pretty easy. Skin, good. Some rigs you're gonna have the gum material, the tongue material, the skin material, the HD skin material, the inner skin material, and there's going to be like a whole list, and HD inner skin and all of this stuff. That gets very confusing, and if you don't apply it right, it gets all weird. It's a pain. So this is quick, easy, and we've got it. Okay, so what other things can we work with here? Well, before we jump in, I do just want to show a couple of tools that will be helpful for us when we're doing facial posing. I'll try to remember to use this as we're going. I try to use this when I'm animating. I don't use it as much when I'm just doing one single pose, but I'll still try to use it as we go. But I want to show it here just in case I forget. So the first tool is one that I learned from Sir Wade. He's the one that showed me this, which is using wireframe on shaded to see the connection of the skin, the sympathetic action of the face. So as we're going to be pushing this, we're going to talk about this much later too. We want to really push the feeling that as the character is moving part of their face, it's affecting the rest. So if he's smiling here, it should affect the upper cheek. And Lucas, hey, a year. Thank you so much. Jeez, a whole year. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Oh man, that's awesome. Thank you. Yeah, totally lost track there. So we want to feel that connection. Now the Apollo rig has a lot of that built in. Certain rigs don't. If you move the mouth corner, it's not going to affect any of the cheek. Now the way you can double check that is to go in here, shading, and then turn on wireframe on shaded. This will show you the entire wireframe on the character. And now when I move something, you can more easily see what is being affected. So Apollo, like you can see that it's affecting all the way up here, which is really nice. Like I said, certain rigs won't have that. So this makes it a lot easier to then take those extra controls and start affecting them and moving them to create that connection. So you don't just have a mouth corner that's moving and it's not affecting anything of the rest of the face. So that's a really nice little thing. For this rig, we probably won't use it too much, but for most rigs, I do like to check this out. Then the other trick is something that I've learned from Derek, and actually, if anyone was in the facial animation Q&A at Animation Mentor, you saw this trick just shown recently, but it's something that he's shown before, is using the I'm forgetting the term, flat lighting on your character. So when you're posing out your character, it's nice to go to lighting, use flat lighting, and to see the rig without any of the actual like shading elements. The reason this helps is it kind of gives you a better idea of the silhouette of your face, especially the mouth. So if you open up the mouth here, you can just focus much more on the simple shapes, the simple shape of the tongue, the teeth, the mouth, versus this, which has all of this extra shading and lines and all of this stuff. So this is really nice. And depending on the rig, it can really just give you a clear, like simple silhouette. Because you've got a texture of the 5 o'clock shadow, we're getting a little bit more detail around the eyes and the mouth here. But usually it's basically just like this flat color. And actually, if I just go, let's go shaded here, and let's do lighting. Use flat lighting. Yeah, like that. So you could do it like this as well. So turn off the texture and then just view the rig this way. So very nice. And yeah, the recording is going to be going live soon. I just need to get some time to edit it together. So we've got all of that. We're pretty much ready to go. The only other notes that I'll say in terms of the setup here is that when I'm setting up, I do like to create my own shot camera, frame up the character. When I'm doing facial animation tests, I like to make the camera look really nice in terms of like the lens length. When you're doing a portrait type shot, usually anywhere from 50 to 100 millimeter lens is going to look really nice. The longer the lens, kind of the wider the face becomes. So if you have thin characters, very thin characters, a longer lens tends to help fill them out a little bit. If you've got thicker characters, shorter lenses can help kind of avoid them feeling too wide. Like that, the idea that like the camera adds 10 pounds, this is essentially the longer the lens, the more you're going to have weight on your character. So I can actually show an example here. Let me open up a file here. There. So you can see this. This is essentially the same person shot with different lens lengths. And you can see that as we go, right here we have this character who looks like he's got a very thin face, very thin shoulders. And by the time we get to a 200 millimeter lens, look how thick his neck looks compared to his face. He just looks much more buff and kind of powerful compared to here, where he just kind of looks weak and very thin. And if we actually look at this in motion, let me open this here. Let's see, actually, what's that going to open up with? Okay, so you can see that. I see how that changes the character right there. And then let's just loop this. So the longer the lens, the more it widens the character. Now, everyone's a little different. Every face is a little different. Every shot is a little different. So there's no like, you have to use this one lens for this distance and that's it. It's very dependent on what you want the character to feel like. But for me, I tend to like 50 to 70 millimeter typically for these types of shots. The reason I like the lower end is that it's closer to what our eyes tend to see. Our eyes, if you calculate it, is about a 44 millimeter lens if it was an actual camera. There's a whole bunch of math in it, and if you look at each individual eye, they're much different. But if you look at the combined stereoscopic vision, it's about 44 millimeter ish. So I like the lower end because it's a little closer to what our eyes see. If I want a more exaggerated shot, then I'll go into something like 100 or maybe even further than that. The default millimeter in Maya is 35. You can find this out here just by selecting your camera right there. And then you can see your focal length right here. So let's take a look at our default perspective camera, 35. With this camera, I've set it to 70, so it's all good. If I wanted to, I could set this to 100. I can set it to whatever I want. So you can tell I don't touch the camera settings at all. You don't usually have to, but once you get into the camera settings, you can really push your shots, especially when you have like more dynamic shots that are further away from the character, or you really want like that deep perspective. Let's say something like this. If you look at the hands, you can really see how far away they are from each other, how one hand looks much bigger than the other. If I set this to, let's say, a 15 millimeter camera, we can get that feeling of just a huge character, almost like you can see a little tiny person running up the arm, and it's almost like a mountain of a man here. Or if we wanted to put the camera really low, now it feels like a giant walking through the scene. If we set this to a long lens, let's say a 105, as we bring our camera here, the hands look much more the same shape. Let's go to a 200 millimeter lens. Now you'll notice you start to get some issues with the materials here. What this is the camera's near clip plane. So if you select your camera and open up the attribute editor, the near clip plane right here. That essentially is Maya's way of determining when it's going to render certain things. If it's too low, as your camera goes back, you're going to get this weird texture issue. So just raise this up. By default, I like to keep this at 1 for pretty much any shot because it works better for most animation rigs. So now we've got a 200 millimeter lens here, and you can really see how flat this feels. It's almost like an orthographic camera. Not quite, but almost. And this is really nice for comedic shots or for landscapes, things that you want to avoid like deep distortion. So there's a lot of different things I would recommend. Yeah, exactly. There you go. A to the J. Take a look at that, and that'll give you an idea of when to use different lens lengths. You can see how they shoot 3D movies, wide angle lenses. Yeah. The other thing that they'll use when you're doing a 3D movie, and you can do this in Maya, is go to create cameras, and you can create a stereo camera, which is what you'd use to set up for 3D films. So if you have like a 3D setup, or you want to do something in VR or something like that, something that can be used with 3D glasses, you could do this in Maya. I've never used it because I've never really worked on a project like that, so haven't really explored it too much, but it is something that is available to you if you want. So let's see, just catching up with the chat here. Okay, cool. So a lot of setup here, but now we finally have our facial pose ready to go. Everything is set up. Now, actually, one last note, I will lock my camera here. So this button right here locks your camera so you don't accidentally move it. This is very important with facial animation, because as you're posing out the face, we want to make sure it looks good from camera. The face is one of those things where, let's say you're posing out the body, you want to make sure that it looks best from the shot camera, but typically it's going to look okay from other angles unless you're really exaggerating things. The face, in almost all cases, is going to look good from the camera and horrible from any other angle. It's just weird, and everything looks deformed, and it can be very strange. So I want to make sure this camera is locked, because if I accidentally move the camera, all my facial poses go out the window and I have to redo them. So at this point, I really want to make sure my camera is not moving. So with that, let's go through. We've got our first key set up. Let's double check, set another key. And I'm going to, let's go to frame 10. I'm going to separate these out a little bit so it's easier to go to different facial poses. Now, let's set another key, double check. I'm just going to do it again. I like to double check with keys. And let's get posing. Now, the first thing is, what pose do we want? Now, we had a few suggestions yesterday. It was, I believe, sleepy to surprised. I wrote it down, but then the program that I wrote it down on crashed. So I can't remember exactly what it was. I think it was sleepy to surprised. So we could do something like that. Another thing that I like to do when I'm doing facial pose tests is I like to find random poses to do. The reason for this is it's very easy to, how to put this? It can be very easy to fall into just doing the same facial poses. Happy, sad, angry. Happy, sad, angry. Those are great, but they're default expressions. They're just kind of base expressions. It's just like general happy. But is it ecstatic? Is it pleased? Like what is the definition of happy? There's so many variations. You can be happy where it's just like, oh, that was a funny joke, happy. You could be like guffawing with laughter, like can't contain your happiness. You could be happy that you won $1 million. You could be happy that your family like survived an operation, like maybe a family member survived an operation and you're just so happy, but it's kind of like a sad happy, like they went through a lot but they survived, and like there's this mix of emotion. So many different elements that go into these emotions. So I want a range. I don't want to just fall into like smile, okay, I'm done. So what I like to do is I'll just look online for emotion generators. So I found this just before the stream here. It's a random emotion generator. I'll give you the link here. Oop, there we go. And essentially here you can put in how many emotions you want. Let's go 10 and randomize it. There we go. Now we have very specific emotions. Awe, sorrow, and actually I should make sure it's set to unique so we don't have the same thing twice. There you go. Pain, boredom, surprise, awe, pleasure, joy, love, despair, optimism. Like these are a little bit more than happy, sad, angry. So this can be a nice way to just try out some different facial expressions that you haven't done before and just kind of get some different ideas. So let's start with, since we had the suggestion, let's start with sleepy. And if anyone else has suggestions for facial expressions, let me know and I'd be happy to try it if we have some time here. So let's get started. So sleepy. Well, the first thing is we don't animate the face. The first thing we want to do is we want to pose out the body. Even though I'm doing a facial test, I don't want to just leave the body in its T pose because that's going to make it very hard to just get a facial test. Now, there's actually two different ways that I will approach this typically. The one is I'll pose out the body. The reason I do this is, like I said, it kind of ties everything together. It makes it feel like the face isn't just this kind of moving in a void feeling. So I'm going to set the arms to FK here, and you can just bring the arms down, pose things out like that, and get the whole body posed out. But another thing you can do while you're posing out body, and if you really don't want, like, let's say you're posing out the face and you really don't want to deal with the body at all, is once again we're going to select the body here like so, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, let's turn off the controls here. I'm going to select all of this, and then I'm only going to select the faces of the head right here. And let's refine that selection there. You can probably go a little higher. Let's go right up to this point. Double check. Okay, cool. And actually we've got a little bit there. Okay. Oh, Always watch your edge loops. It can be weird how they run sometimes. So this edge loop is going all the way down his arm for some reason. Now this is actually a good point. What happens if I just want to select these faces here? You have a few different ways you can do it. You can hold a shift. I'm going to click on this face right here. Let's hold down shift on this face, and then I'm going to go up, and while holding shift, I'm going to double click on this face over here. And what that does is will select all the faces between those 2 points. So I'll show it here. Hold down, and let's actually put this in this mode so we can see it a little clearer. So select this face there, hold down shift, double click there. It selects the faces in between those 2, which is very nice. The other way you can do this, and we showed this yesterday, is just to hold down the tab key, and this will allow you to draw a selection right there. So I can just draw this in, whoop, like so. And then let's just make sure those are selected there. Awesome. So we've got the head selected here. Now in my camera view, I'm just going to go to Show, Isolate Select, View Selected. And voila, we now have no body. And we'll do this on our zoomed camera here as well. And it looks like I missed a face right in the nose area. So you can do that as well. And I'm not going to worry about that right here. And now you can pose out the face without worrying about any body stuff, and it's just the head, which is really nice. And this is great for lip sync, or especially with hand tests. I find this very useful because you can just crop the whole body, just have the arm, and you can just do a whole bunch of hand tests without worrying about any body mechanics. Very nice. So I'm going to have the body visible because I want to show how important certain things are with the body. So let's undo this here, isolate select, turn that off. There we go. And let's reference this back here. Okay. So first step is I want to pose out the body. And in this case, we were going to do sleepy. Sleepy, everything kind of sags down, especially the shoulders. So I want those shoulders to come down, really make him feel like he's relaxed. If you're relaxing, your shoulders will also roll forward slightly. So let's roll those clavicles forward. I'm not going to do too much with the chest, honestly. If I wanted to, I could maybe rotate him forward just a little bit. But I really don't want too much body motion. So I'm going to leave that alone for now. What I do like to do is pose out the neck, though, because the neck adds a lot to facial poses. If I'm tired, but my neck is very straight, I don't really look tired. As soon as I do this, now I really look tired. Everything's dropping down. It's the chest rotating, but it's also the neck. So posing at your neck is very important. Now the neck doesn't move a lot side to side and whatnot, but it will move forward and back quite a bit. So let's kind of push that a little bit, and let's just add a hint to the chest right here. Okay, so we've got that. Now, the next thing is, before I get to the face, we need to figure out the head angle. If I start posing out all the facial expressions and then find out that, oh, I should put my head this way or this way, what we're going to do is have to redo all our facial animation stuff. The facial pose, even though we're doing a facial test, a lot of the expression comes from your head angle. So I can kind of show this here, where, let's go full screen. If I bring my eyebrows up, it's kind of this just maybe like surprised expression here. Eyebrows up. And without changing my expression, I'll just keep my eyebrows up. I'm going to tilt my head down. And now I don't look surprised. I look maybe a little pissed off. I look like it's kind of like, don't do that. But my expression hasn't changed. I've just tilted my head. If I come down here, now we get that really like deep anger. I can make it so one eye you can't even see. And without changing my expression, now we get concern or interest. the head angle pushes your expression. It's not just your face and your brows, your mouth that push the expression. It's which way are you pointing your head. If you have a smile, a nice smile, and then you tilt like this, suddenly it's not a nice smile. You tilt like this, now it's a little bit more arrogant, versus this, which is a little bit more genuine. So you can really sell different expressions by the angle of the head. So sleepy, the head's going to be down probably. He's not going to be looking straight. Going to probably hang down because he's tired. And like you can see here, as I'm doing that, my head kind of wants to tilt in a direction. It's almost like I'm doing this. It doesn't just fall straight down. So in this case, I think I'm going to tilt the head probably towards us a little bit. So he's kind of doing this. I could go the other way. But I think that'll be a little weird because of the way the neck is going. I want to push this line of action, this curve, to the body here. So let's tilt the head down ever so slightly. And just add a little rotation to that head. Just a little bit. And I could exaggerate the neck quite a bit more. But I do want to make sure that his chin stays on frame here. So, just like that, you can see how very different our pose is starting to look just from the body. And once again, is that important for facial stuff? Yes and no. The lower body, not super important, but the head angle, extremely important. You have to pose that out or else you're not going to get good facial expressions. And I'm just looking at an ant who's running across my monitor right now. Hello. That was strange, just zipped across. So from here, now an hour into the stream, we finally get to touch a facial control. Yay. So the first facial control I usually try to work with is the eye control. Eyes are the window to the soul. And the first thing I want to do is I just want to make sure it's set correctly for the scene that I'm working in. So what I mean by this is by default, the eye will either follow the head. So right now you can see that the eyes just follow the direction of the head. Or if I change this, I can set this to stay put while the head, and let's see which control is it. Aim? No. Let's see, space. Let's put that to global. Now, the eyes, I can position here. And as I move the head, they stay behind. This is very nice. It allows you to have different eye motions for different situations. For facial posing, I like to keep the eyes kind of off. That way I can set a kind of default location of where they're looking. And if I have to change the head angle a little bit, it just kind of allows me to refine that a little bit more quickly versus always counter moving the eye. So I like to do that personally. Now let's kind of push his head angle here. At this point, he kind of looks almost like endearing, or you could almost say, oh, and there's the ant. Hello. Oh, I don't know if you can see that. Goodbye. Have fun. I know ants in the house are not great, but I don't like killing things. Kill it. That's what I should do, but I've got some bug traps all set. So we have this. Right now he kind of looks relaxed, but he doesn't really look tired. So let's actually start getting into the actual facial controls. When I'm doing the face, I'll typically start with the top, so eyes and brows, and then move down to the mouth. And the first pass I do is a very rough pass. And for me, it's just kind of getting the overall shape. So one, he's tired, so his brows are going to come down. Now, I don't want the brows to just come down evenly. If I take these brows here and I just go whoop, it looks boring. And for me, I always want to add some asymmetry to the face. The worst thing you can do is just move everything evenly on both sides, where everything just lines up. It kills a pose. It's kind of the same as body posing. You want to add twist and contrapposto and a line of action. The same thing goes for the face. So right now, he's just looking pissed off and his brows are flat. Not that interesting. So I want the head down, and one eye is going to be lowered, or one brow is going to be lowered more than the other. And the way I kind of choose it is, it really depends on the shot, but the main rule I'll use to start with is he interested in what he's looking at, or is he not happy with what he's looking at? So for example, if he sees something and he likes it, the brow will usually raise up on that side. So, ooh, I want that. And you get that opening towards that thing. If you don't like something, you'll usually close that side of your face, and now it's open that way, closed on this side. No, don't want it. So if he's tired and he's talking to someone that maybe he wants to talk to, or he's trying to watch a movie and trying to stay awake, it's something that he wants to do, the brow in the direction he's looking at is going to be a little higher. So let's take this down here and take this down a little bit, and I'm just going to add a little curve to that brow. So something like this. Now he's looking very intense. The thing that's making him look very intense is that his eyes are very open. When you're tired, your eyes don't really want to stay open. And in general, there's a few different things you can think of with eyelids. The first is that our eyelids, and let me actually find the eyelid control here. Right in here. Our eyelids will typically rest on the iris, the color of the eye, when we're not like super intense. So if I want him really angry, I could do that, show some white all around the eye. But in general, our eye will rest on the iris, or when we're really relaxed, on the pupil. So not over the pupil, but on the pupil. The moment it starts crossing over the black of the eye, the pupil, that's when you start getting into this tired feeling, because it's your eyes barely keeping open. Like if you just kind of let your eyes droop and you get that like where you're starting to lose focus and you can't quite see properly, that's your eyelid covering your pupil. So that's what we want here. Just like that. Now he's starting to feel tired. He feels like he's not focusing on anything anymore. So we'll move the eyes evenly at first, but then let's just offset this one just a little bit more open. The lower lids, we'll just get them into position super quick. Maybe a little bit more closed so he doesn't feel like if I open them like this, he looks like he's bored. But we want that kind of squinty-eyed feeling where he's trying to stay awake. Okay. Let's go back to the mouth here. And the mouth, I don't want him to frown. So I'm not going to just do that. Just do that. But I do want to relax the mouth. I don't want it to feel like it's active. So it's going to drop down just a little bit. And then I'm just going to bring it in. When we relax, our mouth tends to come in a little bit versus being out. We're not puckering our lips, but it just kind of drags down a little bit. So we'll do something like this to start with. Okay. Now, does that work? It's not bad. It's not great, but it's not terrible. So I'm going to use this as a starting point. Let's set another key here. Doop. Now, is it a big no-no to change the space of the eyes from head follow to world between frames? Not at all. There will be some times where you want it to stay in one place as the character moves, and then at another point in the shot, it needs to follow the head. So you change it to what you need at that time. It really just depends on that moment. So for example, here, I could be focused on the camera here as I'm looking, and then, oh, wait. And now my eyes are just moving with my head. It changed, and now I'm, again, focused on one thing. So, yeah, definitely change. Does that apply to the rest of the controls? Yes. So any follow line, any FKIK, any control that you need to, or that change the alignment of things, they are not set for the whole shot. You change them when you need them. So for example, the head right here, by default, doesn't follow the chest. If I rotate the chest here, you can see how the head stays straight. It kind of looks like he doesn't really want to talk to this person anymore. Yeah, nah. Maybe I'll lean him forward. Nah. So you can see how the head stays straight. But there are times when, if I tilt, I do this, where my head stays in line with my body. And this might be when the character is starting to fall asleep and you just want this kind of tilt over. Or maybe you want to animate a spin and you don't want to have to counter animate the head and do all of that. Well, I can set that to follow the chest. And now, as I move this, we get this motion. The head stays in line with the chest. So yeah, change it when you need it for what you need it to be. There is no like set rule, you have to keep it this way forever and always, because you do what you need at the moment. There you go. For some reason my keys weren't showing up. Better save. Now, let's go in here a little bit. So how can we refine this facial pose? Overall, it's not bad, but it doesn't feel as dynamic as it could be. So let's kind of analyze what's going on. Well, one, there's not really that much exaggeration. There's also no line of action, and the mouth is very symmetrical. So we can exaggerate and push all of these things, and it's going to help push our pose to that next level. So let's kind of go back. Now that we've got a basic pose to start with, let's go in. How can we push this? So if he's tired, I can push this brow even more. Brows are one of those things that I see students do not push nearly enough. You can push brows really low and really high. So in this case, I just want to push this really low. I don't want to go too far. The moment I start crossing over the eye like this, we're starting to get a little bit more into angry versus tired. So I just want to go until it's kind of resting at the eyelid level. And we can kind of see it right here. Try not to get this. Just a little bit there. As he's tired, his brow might come in just a little bit. And let's rotate this up so we get kind of a curve at the end of it to avoid this. I don't want the anger. I want kind of a relaxed feeling. And I also want to push the curve in the brow here. Let's kind of push this one in a little bit as well. And push that. So I'm just trying to get this nice curve to the whole brow and bring these down just a little bit lower. Let's call that here. I think I can bring this back in a little bit. Relax that brow. The last thing I want is him to feel strained. The moment his brows start to feel like there's tension in there, it takes away from the tiredness and we start getting into different emotions. So let's actually exaggerate this just a little bit more, this curve here. Just a little. Okay. Now going to the eyes here. How can we push the tiredness of them? Well, one thing I like to do with eyes is I like to push the shape of the lids to kind of contrast the different lines. This is going to be something I'm going to talk about quite a bit, but it's essentially complex lines versus simple lines. When you're doing facial poses with the mouth, with the eyes, what you want to avoid is even lines. So let's say this is your eyelid, top eyelid, and then your bottom eyelid is something like this. Very similar. Is that bad? No, but it's not as interesting as if you have, let's say, I'm going to push this here, a very simple lid versus a more complex lid on the bottom here. This makes it more interesting. We got a simple line versus a complex line or more detailed line. Same thing with the mouth. If you have the mouth just open in this very simple shape. Not as interesting as if you do something like this, or a simple line versus a more complex line on the bottom. Yeah, the 3-line rule, as well as just simple versus complex. If we have 2 lines like that, it's not interesting. If you put a straight versus a bend, or a straight versus a curve, or a simple curve versus a bend, or a more complex line, you get more visual interest. So here, let's actually start with this eye, since we can see it a little bit more clearly. What I can try to do, and I've never done this with this rig, so we'll see what controls we need, is I can take the eye corners and I'm just going to move them up a little bit here. And what that's going to do is it's going to help flatten out the shape of the eye. I'm also going to rotate the lid here so we get more weight of the eyelid towards the center. This will help focus the eye. Let's kind of lower that lid just a little bit. Oops, that's a crease. So let's just shape that a little bit more here. Maybe I'm going to bring in this corner out here, so it feels like the corners are already trying to squinch together just a little bit. Let's do the other eye here. So same thing. I think I could push the lower lid quite a bit higher here. Really feel that contrast between the 2 eyes. You can see how it really starts getting into that, like, barely keeping his eyes open. If I go too far, he'll look like he's actually squinting and putting effort into it. I don't want that. It's the lack of effort that I'm trying to aim for. So let's push this eyelid up here just a little bit. And then, oops, wireframe, that's what I'm looking for. Let's push this eyelid and kind of shape it. When you're shaping the eyelid, if you have the controls, rotate them, translate them, do whatever you can. Don't just bring them up or down. So I want to push this, and once again, I want to get just a little hint of the eyelid there so that it feels tired versus angry. The moment we stop seeing the lid, he starts to feel a little bit more angry. So just push that there, and here we have the skin control right here. I'm going to try to use this to avoid the upper lid looking so intense. Bring this down. That's basically the skin you have right under your brow there. And I think I can push this lower just a little bit. So something like that. Hey, Bittersweet, thank you so much for the sub. I really appreciate that. Thank you. Aw. I really appreciate that. Now this eye, I was noticing it had a little bit too much of a curve, so I want to try and flatten that out just a little bit. And see if I can maybe bring up the eye corners here just a bit. By bringing up the eye corners, what you're doing is you're taking the eyes from being very round at the top here, and let's kind of put the bottom line there, like so, and you're flattening that out so the eye has to kind of feel more bored. So just kind of getting that flat feeling there. Think of Nick from Zootopia. So something like that. I want to see if I can push this eye a little bit more. Where's the control? Okay. I could even do this, where the eye is starting to droop closed. I kind of like that. It just makes him feel like he's really not focusing. Okay, so let's move from the eyes. One thing I do like to do when I'm doing facial poses is I don't want to get locked in one thing for too long, where I'm just like nitpicking and, oh wait, that line of the eyelid, is it right, is it not, is it right, is it not? because you can keep doing that forever. Do some changes. Once you have them in place, take a break, move on to the next thing. So in this case, let's move on to the mouth. So the mouth, as he's dragging here, we want the mouth to drag, but we don't want it to be symmetrical. So I'm going to take this mouth corner here and I'm going to drag this one out a little bit. Probably down like so. And then the other one's going to be a little bit narrower. And just kind of closer in. So I'm trying to offset this where this mouth is kind of dragging back down here. Now I could actually push this quite a bit. It really depends on how you want to exaggerate this. So let's kind of keep that a little bit flat here. And animals and hello! Now another thing I like to do with the mouth is I don't like to keep it in the center of the face. I like to translate the mouth over if I can, one way or the other. And you can really see how that pushes the expression. When you leave the mouth in the center of the face, it looks boring. Like if you notice when I'm talking, I talk a lot out of the side of my mouth, especially this side when I'm on camera. I don't know why, it just happens naturally. So I'll talk and I'm doing this, and you'll see the middle of my lip is actually over here, not over here. You can see over to the side. That actually bends my nose as well. As you're doing this, your nose bends. Right from there, all the cartilage. So doing this is very natural for us. We talk out of the sides of our mouth, not just center. When you're tired, you might have your mouth kind of drag and droop on that side. So I'm going to try to push that just a little bit, where as he's kind of here, he's not just centered, it's going off to the side. Now the other thing we can push is the up and down of the mouth. When we're very tense, our mouth goes up. Anger, happiness, the top lip is very narrow. So you get this. If he's tired, everything's going to droop, everything's going to sag. So if I want him to feel tired, I'll drag this down a little bit. I could go pretty far here. Like I could do that. But now we're starting to get into the feeling that he's forcing this expression. But I can still bring this down quite a bit. Let's maybe try to move it a little bit more to the side and then rotate the mouth a little bit. I like to rotate it. In this case, I'm trying to see if I like the idea of contrapposto in the mouth and eyebrows, or in this case, I could go the other way and just kind of let this side droop. It's going to remove our contrapposto, but it's going to make the left side of his face, screen left, feel much heavier. So it's almost like that one side has fallen asleep already and is all just going down. So we'll see. We'll give it a try. Let's take the mouth corner here. And let's see, what else can we do with the mouth? One thing I always like to watch out for is the curl at the corners. I want to make sure that they feel interesting and not kind of get weird lines to them. So what controls do we have here? Okay, this is the depth control, zip and puff. Okay, so I think it's going to be these two. Just shape that a little bit more. Okay. I'm pushing the mouth weight here to try and push the asymmetry of the line. So what I mean by that is when you have a curve, a default thing that we tend to do is we make the line weight of the curve very even. So the line weight is where the line is being pulled up, the highest peak, or the where the force is going. And right now it's right in the center. And if everything is like that, it's not that interesting. So instead, if you push the curve, so it's doing this, you get different line weights. So here, the peak is actually over here. You could do something like that. You can see how it changes the feeling of the curve on each one. That's what I'm trying to do here with the mouth. I want to push that line weight so that it feels a little longer on one side versus the other. It'll make that kind of drag come through. I could push a little bit of a, not quite a sneer, but like his mouth is trying to stay a little active in there if I wanted to. This starts getting into just at what level do you want him to be? What tiredness? Is he totally like asleep, or is it like almost there? We could open the jaw a little bit. When you start to relax, your jaw opens up. So we can kind of do something like this. Just a little bit open. And I'm going to try to take this bottom lip and flatten it out. So now we have, see here how both curves kind of match each other? I want to make it so one curve is a little straighter than the other. So the bottom lip is just a little straighter. And I'm going to zip the mouth closed a little bit. So the mouth corners just feel a little kind of, for lack of a better term, stickier. It tends to make mouths feel more interesting. That's a little too much right there. Now I think this rig has a zip control. If your rig has that, essentially you can just take the mouth corner here and use this. And that kind of brings them in together. So you could use that as well. Okay. I think I might have a little too much rotation on the mouth here. Okay. So we're starting to get there. Let's see. What else can we do? Well, we talked about the nose. Let's kind of make the nose just a little bit more rotated there. Kind of follow the line of action. You can see how it's starting to shape a curve into the face here. And then from here, let's actually save this for now and kind of make another version. In this version, what I want to try and do is I want to push the line of action of the face and maybe the head angle just a little bit more. I almost feel like I could tilt the head a little bit to kind of push the fatigue. It felt like it was kind of midway. It wasn't quite all the way into fatigue yet. So I'm just adjusting the head angle a little bit. And then let's try to push the line of action of the face. If you use these controls, you want to use them usually kind of subtly. But on this rig, you've got kind of these stretch controls right here. And these can be great for pushing your line of action. So you have that one in the middle here. And you can really see how that starts to really push that feeling of fatigue. And up here as well. So we can really try to exaggerate our facial expression using these controls. So let's go in here. We also have a chin control, which I might actually use. No, actually we're fine here. Let's actually take the jaw and add just a little bit of rotation to the jaw. I don't usually rotate the jaw too much, but in this case, because he's tired, his jaw is just going to be hanging a little bit. I'm going to add that in there. And let's maybe add a little squash to the top of the head, just a little bit. Drag it back. The middle of the face, let's kind of push it forward. So it's kind of like he's trying to pay attention, but can't. I could also push this in. You can really change an expression using this. Now, not many rigs have this middle control here. This is kind of specific to the Apollo and Artemis rigs, but I love this control. It is so cool. And then let's take the chin here. I'm just going to add a little bit more drag. Like so. Okay. So we've kind of pushed the face a little bit. The line of action, you can definitely see there's a curve there now. I feel like the eyes could be a little bit more exaggerated now that we've pushed this. They feel kind of even. So I'm going to try something. I'm going to push this eye closed a little bit more and then open this one up just a little bit. The reason for this is to show discoordination with the face. Is it going to work? We'll see. A lot of times it's kind of pushing things to see if they work. But essentially we have this one brow that's up, but that eye is starting to droop closed. So it shows that the face isn't being coordinated. They're not working together. Typically, if that brow goes up, that eye will open up a little bit more as well. So it'll help to sell the fatigue and that kind of like he's barely functioning versus keeping it all connected. Okay. The other thing I can push with the eyes is the creases. So let's see. Where would it be? I believe maybe in the eye control here. No. Fleshy eyes. No. So what I'm looking for is the ability to push the bags under the eyes. Essentially, I want to exaggerate the bags here. Kind of get those to be a little bit more kind of tired looking. I wonder if I can push them in. Oh, yes. Perfect. So by pushing them in here, I can exaggerate that curve. Right here. And really start getting those bags under the eyes there. If I bring it out, you can see how that smooths it out. And we start making him feel a little bit more awake. I want these big, heavy bags under his eyes. Like he hasn't slept in months. He's an animator. Let's push that a little bit there. I'm going to try to push the skin above the eye here just a little bit more. Something like that. Okay. What else can we push? I think the lower lid can be exaggerated a little bit on this eye. Push that curve. It's kind of flat and even, so I want to push the line weight of the curve, like we talked about earlier. This eye is starting to get a little weird droop in it, so I'm going to just exaggerate a little bit of the curve here. And let's actually bring the eye corner down here. So it starts to curve down right there. Now, another thing you can do when you're animating eyes is don't forget that you can scale them. So I can take these eyes and just kind of scale them down a little bit to really add to that squint, or I could scale them in to make them really tiny if I wanted to. In this case, I might just scale them down just a tad. And let's take the pupils here. Where are they on this? Right here, I think. Yeah. So let's take the pupils, and if he's tired, usually your pupils will start to kind of relax, which kind of opens them up a little bit. So let's kind of do that. I want to relax that lower lid. It was covering up the iris so much that he's starting to look like he's squinting. So I want it to just like touch the very bottom edge right there. And let's take this and maybe bring this up just a little bit. Actually, I like both. Up makes it feel like he's really trying to keep his eyes open, like he's trying to force his eyes to stay open. Down, you really just get those bags. I kind of like that. Yeah, that feels good. And push that shape of them. The eye bags underneath, they follow your eye socket, so usually they'll kind of pull out slightly. So kind of this way. It kind of adds more directionality to the face. Now, going to the mouth here, one thing I need to push is the silhouette of the teeth. The teeth, right now we're seeing a little bit of the top teeth, a little bit of the bottom teeth. They're kind of messy. So I want to simplify this. Now, which teeth do we show and how do we show it? Well, it's up to you, really. Typically, when someone's really energetic, you'll see more of the top teeth. The lip gets pulled up, and you tend to see more of that. If a character's tired and everything's dragging down, you're going to see more of the bottom teeth. So in this case, I probably want to show a little bit of the bottom teeth. It'll show that the face is dragging down. So what I'm going to do, just for simplicity's sake, is I'm just going to move the top teeth out of the way, take the bottom teeth, and I'm going to rotate them because I don't want to see the molars. See how we can see a little bit of that back molar there, and it's just kind of killing our silhouette. I'm just going to rotate them down so we just see that front edge here. And just bring this so we just see a tiny bit right there. Now the tongue, let's see what we can do with the tongue. With the tongue, I could try bringing it out completely. See how that feels? That's not bad. If I have a little bit of the tongue, it's probably just going to be just a little bit of red right in there. So we kind of get that kind of cartoon mouth with the tongue just kind of barely showing. Chickless, yeah, exactly. So we get something like this. Now, actually, from a distance, I'm not too happy with that because it's like half red, half black. So I'm just going to hide the tongue completely. Just have it nice and simple. Nice, simple silhouette. And this is where turning on the flat lighting can help. So let's kind of look at this here with flat lighting. You can see how that mouth, if I was to bring the tongue back in right there, it kind of makes it feel like he's like pressing his tongue against his teeth in a weird way. It makes the silhouette of the mouth not read correctly. If I do that, now we're just seeing the teeth. And let's actually try pushing the teeth just a little lower. Just so we get a little bit. And actually, let's just see. Like, with teeth, without teeth. Kind of like both, honestly. There's a reason I like one like this. It just gives a nice cleaner silhouette to the mouth, but it makes him feel like he's more coherent. The moment you see a little bit of teeth here, it makes him feel like his face is just drooping and he's lost control of his face. So I think I'm just gonna like get a little bit of teeth and see if I can get an arc to them. So essentially what I want is the feeling that we see roundness to the bottom teeth, not a flat line. So we'll go with something like that. So let's take this. What else can we push? Let's actually see how much we can push the brows down. I think we can push the brow just a little bit lower. Push that up a little bit higher so he kind of feels less angry. Pull that in just a little bit. So we're starting to get there. I think at this point we're pretty close. Just seeing how far I can move the mouth. Let's do this for now. So from there, let's see, would you suggest someone that's working on lip sync to actually animate the teeth? Yes. If you're animating the teeth, or if you're doing lip sync and posing out of the mouth, you need to pose the teeth out to work with the shape of the mouth. If you don't pose out the teeth, your lip sync is never going to look nice. It's going to look correct because that's what happens in real life, but visually it's not going to be good. The teeth, you need to position them to fit with the exaggerated mouth shapes that we create on a lip sync test. Now, you don't have to do it on the very first pass, but you will be doing it at some point. But move up and down as the mouth does? No. If you see the teeth shouldn't move. You want to move the teeth when the audience doesn't see it, and then they just snap into the next position, and then they're there. If the audience ever sees the teeth moving, so for example, in this shot, if you were to see the teeth kind of moving around, that would look totally fake, and it would ruin the illusion of the shot. So you'll move the teeth, but only when the audience doesn't see them. So when the mouth closes or in a very fast motion, and then they're in a new position. So yeah. So I think with this, I'm gonna see if I can push the head angle just a little bit more. I kind of like raising it up here. It makes it feel like he's just trying to stay awake a little bit more, and we see the bags more of the eyes. Whereas this, it feels like he's just a little angrier. So I'm gonna try to just move the eyes over here. Now this eyelid on this side, we're starting to reverse the eyelid shape, so I'm going to bring this down here. So what I mean by reverse the eyelid shape, I'll draw it out here, is the eyelid was starting to do this. So it was going down on this side. I want to keep it up ever so slightly or flat. Is this in Max? No, this is Maya. Autodesk Maya. I wonder if I can push the curve of the brow a little bit. I don't want him to look worried. I want it to just look very neutral. There we go. So something like this. So we've got this tired expression. We could keep pushing this, but for now, let's say we've got it. A lot of times with expressions, like you could keep noodling it forever. At some point, just call it and move to the next expression and then come back to this expression later. That is going to save you a lot more time, and it's going to be easier to see mistakes or things that you can improve once you kind of come back to it. But before we do that, let's actually just compare character from the beginning. So we've got this. Let's look at where it went. So we went into this, which was the basics of the tired, but you can definitely see it's not really tired anymore. It's just like almost pissed off. We pushed a little bit more tired, and now you really feel that drag of the face. Adding that line of action, pushing the teeth especially, that silhouette of the mouth, it really helps to exaggerate that fatigue in the character. So there we go. Now let's do another pose here. So I'm going to start back from everything zeroed out here. And actually, are the arms back in? Yeah, I keyed them in IK. Let's do that. Okay. So next expression we can do. I believe the last suggestion was surprise. So let's go into surprise now. Now surprise, there's a lot of different ways we could be surprised. The big thing is going to be big eyes, kind of the head kind of stretches out a little bit, so it's everything nice and big and tall. Things are nice and straight. If he's really shocked, his neck could still be forward here, but essentially the shoulders can come back a little bit, so you kind of can pull back. This will add contrast to the tired, where now you feel that shoulder shrug a little bit, and maybe the shoulders come up a little. And you could be surprised and go this way, or we can stretch it down. Honestly, it's whatever we want. I think I'm going to just keep the shoulders back here a little bit. It'll help push the stretch of the whole thing. The neck, I'm going to angle it slightly forward, just because by default our neck does have a little bit of a forward lean. This is the facial robot from Softimage still living among the Autodesk softwares? I do not know. That I cannot say. I don't think I've ever used the facial robot. But hopefully it still exists. So let's take a look at the head angle. So head angle with surprise, there's a few different ways we could think about it. We could kind of do the, well, what was it? The gopher reaction when you had the, and it's just looking at the camera, and you could do something like that. Typically, surprise, everything kind of straightens out, so you're kind of relaxed, tilted, and what? Your head kind of straightens up. Maybe there's a little bit of a questioning tilt to it, so it's not just perfectly straight. So in this case, let's maybe tilt it up a little bit as well, so he's kind of angled this way. Now I have to think of where he's looking here. Let's actually keep the eye direction the same as this right there, approximately. So this way we kind of keep that the same. I think having the head tilt away is going to be nice. So think of where, when you're thinking of the head angle, look at the top of the head versus the chin, look at the rotation, look at the tilt, all of that. You're looking at all of those rotations. If you're just doing like the tilt here, the up and down, that's not going to be enough. You need to think of all three axes. So in this case, I think something like this could work. Now, there's a lot of different surprised expressions. There could be scared, surprised, like everything big and open. There's the small mouth, big brows, all of that stuff. I think that's what the surprise I'm going to go with, just because it's going to be similar to this, but we can kind of push it in a few different ways and see the differences between them, even though they are similar. So let's kind of take this here, and Maya has NLA. That I'm not sure. I do mostly animation. I don't do too much, animation, sculpting, modeling, basic rigging, basic rigging, but mostly animation. So we've got our head angle. We've got the basic expression here. Let's just create the basic surprise. So I'm going to do this the quick way, and the way I see a lot of student work happen, and the way I did my student work when I started, where everything kind of is even. Like the brows go up. There we go. The mouth comes down. Actually, usually people don't move the mouth when they animate. So, I just want to kind of show the contrast here. The mouth comes in. We can do that. And then the eyes open. That's where you're really going to start getting that surprise, is as soon as the eyes start opening up. There we go. Surprise. Done. We can call that a day. Nonlinear algebra. Nice. I always liked algebra. I'd have to look into that. So, we've got this basic expression here. Now, does that work? Yeah, you could say that it does, but it's not interesting, really. It doesn't feel like the character has pushed your... it's not visually interesting. So let's try to push this. Now, there's a question here. Oh, this is an interesting question. What is your stance on contemporary cinema distorting the impressionable minds of today's youth by demonizing future artificial intelligence creations regarding authentic life and genuine computer consciousness? For context, films such as Ex Machina, iRobot, Blade Runner. Well, I've only seen Blade Runner once, and I will admit I fell asleep on it, so I can't say too much about that. But for me, I'm in the Star Trek category, in the sense of, like, if there was an artificial intelligence that was demonstrating capabilities of thought and consciousness, I would want to consider that as another life form. And honestly, we're getting close to it in a lot of different ways. So contemporary cinema demonizing it, it's definitely something we're going to have to be careful of, especially in the age of artificial intelligence as it progresses. There will be a time when we'll have to start thinking of the rights of artificial intelligence and what we can and can't do, because they will be living creatures in many senses. Now, at this point, it's hard to say when that'll be and how that works, but it is definitely an interesting topic that I've thought about quite a bit. And for me, I'm excited for the day when artificial intelligence becomes more advanced. Like, I always think of Data from Star Trek. Like, Star Trek is my ideal future. If we could reach that point, specifically Star Trek, like Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, that would be so cool. But yeah, I would say modern media, it's kind of 50-50, at least for me. A lot of the shows that I watch, it feels like they're not demonizing artificial intelligence, but kind of pushing it forward and seeing it as living. So it really just depends on what you watch, I guess. I haven't really watched too many shows that demonize it, but again, that's just the shows I see. Now let's try to push this expression here. So the first thing that I want to do is exaggerate the line of action. So once again, think of what the character is looking at. If he's surprised and doesn't like what he's looking at, we're going to scrunch that face up on that side. If he's interested in what he's seeing, we're going to exaggerate that contrapposto. So I think in this case, I want him to be interested in it. So let's push this and push the angle of the brows here. I'm going to try to push this as much as we can, like get this as high as we possibly can. Now there's a few different surprise expressions we can go with. We can go with the worried, the questioning, something like that. We can go with just kind of the basic surprise. Now, as you bring your brows up, they tend to separate out. So they go out, not just straight up and down from the center here. So I'm going to pull this out just a little bit. So we'll go with something like that. And you can definitely see there's a lot more contrast in there. If just praising your animation work, I can see right now that you have true talent in your craft. Oh, thank you. And that's awesome that you were going through the streams and asking that question. It's a good question. Artificial intelligence is a wonderful new frontier that I hope as humanity will approach properly. It's our chance to finally do something right from the groundwork, and I hope we do it right. And yeah, have a good night, and thank you so much for dropping by. And no worries about disturbing the stream. This is what these streams are all about. Answering questions, even if they're totally weird and like off topic, that's the best kind. I love those questions. They're just fascinating to me. So we've pushed the brows. We are really pushing that line of action here. I wonder if I can maybe push this brow down here a little bit more. Just to kind of push the expression, make it a little less default, I guess you could say. So I'm pushing the line weight. I'm pushing the weight of the line on the outside edge instead of being right in the center. Same thing here. Look at this curve. If I take this brow and push it this way, we can start to push that line weight just a little. Okay. So we've pushed the brows. Let's push the eyes. Now for the eyes, I'm just going to really open this one up here. And let's see if I can scale up the eye a little bit too. I don't want to go too far. If you go too far, you start to distort the iris and the pupil, which is great for a smear frame, but I don't want to go so far that is kind of super noticeable. Now let's push the eyelid. And I want to just push the shape. Once again, it's the line weight. Right now it's right in the center. It's kind of boring. It's kind of going here. See how it's like right in the center? If I just do this, we start to get a more interesting dynamic shape to the eye. It creates this diagonal instead of kind of a straight up and down. Okay, we've got that. I'm not a huge fan of the shape that we're getting right here. I'm going to push that a little rounder. I want to get this nice round shape to the eye. Not perfectly round, but rounder. So let's do that. Let's open this one up a little bit more. Round it out as well. See, that's the skin around the eye. That's not the control I want. I want this one. Eye controls can be kind of a pain sometimes to select. So just be patient. Set your shot to wireframe if you have to. That way you can kind of push the shape a little bit better. And then let's shape this eyelid up here. So once again, looking at that, just trying to push that shape a little bit more. And especially, I'm trying to bring everything kind of inwards. So it just kind of adds more directionality. So something like that. Let's take the skin above the eye. See how much we can push this. A lot of times I like to try and push this inwards. So once again, look at the shape of the darkness around the eye. And I'm just trying to like push that a little bit. Shape it just a tad. So we get something a little bit more dynamic with the eye. Okay. See. Now, let me catch up with the chat. It's possible because the chat boss running us in circles with the answer. Yeah. One example, the megatrend is wanting real human touch in response to higher tech. That's interesting. I don't mind talking to a machine unless you have to deal with something like very specific and you need like answers on things that might be trickier for an automated system to work with. Normally I like automated systems. So here I'm going to push the eyelid crease here just a little bit to help push the shape of the eyelid itself so we can kind of see it here. I want to get this to kind of work with the eye a little bit more so that we don't just get this. It helps kind of pop the eyelid just a little bit. You can kind of see it there. And once again, shape that. So especially with this eye here, because it's so much more exaggerated, we can really shape that so it's not just a straight line above the eye. Then this one, I don't like the fact that this one we can't see at all. So I'm going to try and push it. Just push it a little bit so that we can actually see it. That was an interesting song. So something like that. We can exaggerate it later and push it later as well. So that just helps kind of show the eyelids, makes them stand out, makes them more interesting. Lower lids, we can do the same thing. I think for the cheeks, I'm going to let the cheeks kind of come down a little bit. So instead of having this high thing here, just let these come down. Essentially, I'm just stretching the face. That's what I'm doing here. The cheek controls here, or no, these are orbital lower. Yeah, so here we've got the cheekbones. I can lower this just a tad. Technically, they shouldn't move because it's bone right there, but it'll help push the stretch of the pose. If he's a little worried, I could even curl the brows a little bit here. We'll see how that goes. Okay. What else can we push here? Let's take a break from the eyes. Let's go to the mouth. So the mouth, we can kind of open it up just a bit if we wanted to. Once again, drop the mouth. So this already, you can see that how that helps there. If we keep it just normal, he kind of feels, let's exaggerate this, like that, which just makes him feel like he's really intense. But if you drag this down, we start to get that surprised feeling. Let's move it to the side. I'm just going to rotate it a little bit. We can push it out a little bit so he's pursing his lips ever so slightly. As we're doing that, the shape of the lips, we can tighten them up just a little bit. Let's see, I'm trying to think what kind of line I want to get on the lips here. I'm trying to think, maybe it could be a happy surprise, so we get a little bit of like a half smile in there. We could try that. So let's try something like that. At this point, it's hard to see the line of the mouth here, so I'm just going to go to lighting, use default lights so we can see the mouth here. And there's a few different things that I'm already not too happy with in terms of the face, like in the mouth. The nose was flat, which, not great. So I'm going to try and push this so that the nostrils don't flatten out completely. If you do notice that they're flat, you can always take one nostril and just kind of like raise it up, and that just breaks up that line of the nose. Is it a huge deal? Not really, but I'm always looking for ways to avoid flat lines in my poses. Flat lines kind of just kill a pose. So now the mouth here. See that how the line weight is very even? Let's try to exaggerate that. So maybe I'm going to push, make sure I select both. Oop. Push this up a little bit here. Or, I have to think. As he's surprised. Let's maybe try to push it up this way. Just slightly. Exaggerate that rotation there. So something like this. Now we can push it quite a bit more. Like I could push the mouth corner over here quite a bit and then bring this in this way a little bit more. But I do want to keep that nice narrow mouth. I wonder if I could maybe purse the lips open just a bit. Yeah, I kind of like that. It kind of gives a little bit more shape. It feels like the corners are pressing in, and we're getting a little bit more pucker in there. It's just adding some visual interest. I believe this also has a lip roll, so I'm going to use this a little bit to just roll the lips out. So we start getting just that kind of surprise, like, oh, shape. I don't want like a full O or like a kissy face, but just this kind of like the mouth drops open ever so slightly. Right here. it just helps avoid everything kind of feeling flat. And it gives us another area where we can like simplify the top of the lip here, get this kind of flatter line, and get a little bit more of a dynamic shape to the outer line here. Let's play with the zip control. This is getting a little weird right here. I'm going to round that out there and then use the zip control to close it a little bit more naturally. Right there. It helps avoid that weird pinchiness that I was getting. Zip. And then let's see if we can push the mouth shape a little bit more. Okay, so we'll go with something like that for now. What else can we push? I think I can push the jaw a little bit to help push that line of action. The jaw you have to be careful with, otherwise certain times it can make the rig look really, really strange. Now I'm not liking the top lip here, so I'm going to reset it. This is something I do all the time. If you're noticing that your lips or any control is starting to get kind of out of shape, just reset it. So I'm just going to reset that there, and then that way I can shape it to whatever I need. And I'm going to do the same with the bottom here. And then that way we just simplify it. Okay. This corner I feel like could be zipped a little bit more. So let's kind of leave it at this for now, or else I'm going to spend all day on the lips. See, this is, again, what I was talking about is it's very easy to start nitpicking, where you start working on a pose and you just kind of work and work and work and work. And are you doing any better? Are you doing any worse? You don't know. It's hard to say. You're just kind of locked into these fine tweaks that never end. This is noodling in animation. Once you start getting into this is what we typically call noodling. And we want to avoid this at all costs. The moment you start noodling a pose is the moment that you're wasting time. And our productivity just tanks. It just goes way down. You're not doing what you should be doing, which is progressing. So in this case, I need to just like call it and move on to something else. So let's go through here. Where can we kind of push certain things? I wonder if, just out of curiosity, I want to try something. Yeah, no, not like that. I'm just going to push the nostrils a little bit more to get a little bit more of an angle in there. Okay, so we've got that. Now, looking at it from the full view here, let's actually make another copy of the pose there. Remind me again how the term noodling started? I forget. Where did it come from? I feel like I looked it up, but I can't remember what it was. I'll have to look that up again. I'm sure it's probably one of those things that no one remembers. But yeah, it's an interesting term. See, it's interesting how hard it is to tackle the Deadeye syndrome even today. Yeah, Deadeye syndrome is very tricky. And essentially it's when the eyes don't really feel like they're focused on anything. And especially when the eye mask around the eye is just kind of blank. So pushing the asymmetry helps a lot. Another thing that can help is pushing your eye direction. So a good polishy thing to do is to bring your eyes just in a little bit. So you can see here, I'm taking that outer eye and just kind of whoop, bringing it in. It crosses the eyes just a little bit and makes the characters feel more focused. If your characters start to do this, they can feel a little unfocused. It's not a bad thing, but it's just stylistically, a character will be more focused when their eyes are more inset. Now I want to be careful that I don't get like odd negative spacing around the eye where the eye white here is super narrow or the eye is touching like this, because that offsets the eyes a little too much. Oh yeah, when you're not a native English speaker, some of the phrases are really weird. I speak French. Some of the French phrases, like French to English, you just can't translate them. Like one of the ones that my family says once in a while is "Qu'est-ce que ça mange en hiver?" And it's a French phrase, and if you translate it, it just means "what does it eat in winter?" And it has no meaning. It's just "what does it eat in winter?" And it's supposed to mean like this whole complex idea, but there's not really a translation for it. It's just this phrase, which is always fascinating to me. Now, let's try to push the surprise a little bit more. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to see if I can push the head angle a little bit more. And you can see already we're starting to really push that exaggeration in the expression, make it a little bit more dynamic. I think I can also push the neck forward a little bit more so that we get that line of action that flows through the head into the neck. With this rig and the jewels and like a lot of the AM rigs, you have the center control. You can use this to help push that line of action a little bit more. Let's see what else we can do. Let's try to push these controls here. So this will help push our line of action a little bit more. Kind of add that stretch to the face. Let's drag this down. So we get that extra little squash and stretch. Now you could go really crazy with this. If you're going Hotel T style, go all the way. I'm trying to keep it like fairly simple so that we stay on model the whole time. But we can do that. What else? If he's surprised, one thing I like to do is just play around with the iris and pupil size. People don't do this nearly enough, honestly, and you can really help sell a pose. You don't have to go like super far like this, but even just a tiny little bit when you have that contrast between the two poses can really make a nice difference. So something like that. Kind of feel like the nose could be dragged down a little bit. Just a little. Let's see. And then the mouth. Let's go in here and let's see how we can push the silhouette if we don't see the teeth. I kind of like that a little bit more. It kind of makes like an O face. Like if I do O, you don't see the white of the teeth. And my camera just froze at the most inopportune time. So, boop, boop. There you go. So you don't see that O. If you can see the teeth there. This helps just a little bit. And can you flash in the wireframe for 1 second? So right here. Yeah, there's definitely enough topology. This rig is really good. So at this point, I just kind of want to shape the mouth a little bit more. there's something about the mouth I'm not a super fan of right now. Yeah, I think let's go this way. I'm starting to like this a little bit more. So essentially, like if I'm not enjoying a mouth shape or any shape, I try to just think, okay, how can I push this? How can I put a little bit more expression in here? And here, I just kind of want to add this tiny little, like almost a sneer in there. It's like, oh, and you just get that little pull right in there. I don't want it a ton, not like this, but just enough so that we get this visual interest in the mouth, and it's not just a simple, basic line. So let's do something like that. Now, from a distance, you can see how it's feeling very even, where both sides, the whole thing kind of feels flat. The line weight is not interesting. So I'm going to try and push this a little bit so we get one side more open than the other. Something like that. Get a triangular shape. I'm thinking of 2D shapes. I'm looking at the 3D form to make sure I'm not distorting anything terribly, but mostly I'm just thinking of 2D shapes as I'm working on this. If I start thinking about just the 3D shapes, it's a lot of stuff that doesn't matter. In the face, like if I look at the face from this angle, actually it doesn't look terrible. Actually looks pretty good from here. But usually when you turn the camera, your face is going to look really weird. And that's okay. Essentially what you want is for the face from camera to look as good as possible. Trying to see, I kind of like, let me undo. Kind of like it turning a little bit more this way. Now, another thing that I look for whenever you've got a curve in the face is, let me open up my toolbox here. If you draw lines, where's my layer manager? Which monitor is on? Hidden somewhere. Anyway, if you draw a line right here, you can see that we have a clear line of action going through. But if you look at the line here and draw a straight line like so, see how they almost connect? It almost like makes a bow and arrow type shape there. I don't want that. I want to add a little asymmetry to this, where if you draw a line from the top to the bottom, it doesn't line up. So I'm just going to take the head here and just go whoop. And now the top of the head is offset from the chin, and it makes a more dynamic line to the face. So let's see what else can we push. I wonder if we can push the eyes just a little bit more. Yeah, we definitely can. Okay, so let's kind of take this and let's see, since you're using zip controls, are you refraining from using the corresponding lip controls? Yes. If I'm using the zipped controls, I'm going to refrain from using these smaller controls because it's going to be a lot of counter animation. If I'm using the smaller controls, I'll refrain from using the zip controls. Essentially, I just try to focus on one simple set of controls as much as I can. If I'm doing two things that kind of control the same area, that's just a lot of extra work, essentially. There we go. Something like that. So we'll call this expression here. Say that's done. Let's actually save. And let's compare what our shot started at. So we started from here, default. And then this was our first pass of the surprise. And this is the type of face that I see a lot of students get into, which is they push it, but honestly, from what I see with students, it would be more like this. The brows they're pushed, but they're not pushed as high as they could be. The main problems Oh, and there goes my camera. What is wrong with my camera today? No! I think the battery, it might be overheating. So the main issue I see is that the brows are flat, the mouth is flat, everything, if you draw a line, and I can't draw straight lines to save my life, you draw lines, everything is flat. And then if you go from the top and kind of connect all of these lines here, all the way to the chin, it's flat. This is boring. It's just not interesting to look at. Everything lines up. It's symmetrical. The corner of the nose lines up with the corner of the mouths on both sides. Everything is boring. So what we need to do is we need to exaggerate. So we take this. This might be a good starting point, but now we go through and we exaggerate that facial expression, push the line of action. Now you can definitely see that there's some curvature going on here in the mouth. We get that curve through the whole face right there. That helps a lot. Now, we did this, but then once we get here, now we need to start polishing and really refining the shapes. And then we can start getting into that. So you can see very minor differences, but it makes a lot of change in the end. And we get a much cleaner, exaggerated pose. And you don't have to exaggerate as much as I did here. Like, let's pull that back a little bit. But you can definitely see how much it pushes the face shape a little bit more. And we get that line of action that goes from the top of the head all the way down the neck into the body. And the eyes really help focus the character, just bring them in slightly. So we've got tired. We've got surprised. I wonder, I'm just gonna see what happens if I bring the, let's actually push the clavicles way down. Yeah. Just for the sake of it. That way from here to here, we have that really nice contrast. Okay. I think we have time for one more facial expression. So let's take all of this, set one more key. No, I'm missing a control here. Oh no, wait, that's just splining. Yep. Okay. Posing actions? Yeah, so we want... oh wait, actually, are you asking about opposing actions, or is this in relation to the shoulders? Let's see. Do you have time to look at my shot after the demo? If we do a quick face pose, I've got about 45 minutes before I have to get going. But if we do a quick one, we should be able to look at some work. And is this a commercially available rig? Yes. So this is the Apollo rig. Let me find you the link here. Here it is. Let me get the link. So there you go. So this is the Apollo rig. Oh, there you go. A to the J. I don't even have to look for links anymore. A to the J's got it. And then it has the Artemis rig as well. So that's the female version. I would recommend getting the bundle because they're both really, really good rigs. And then if you want to get the clothing for them, that's separate. I'm not using the clothing just because it was more work to set up. So really good rigs. I highly recommend them, especially if you're doing facial animation. So, okay, Johan, in relation to the shoulders, yeah. So it's what I was looking for in the shoulders is this counter animation that when he gets surprised, we feel that change from the tired to here, and as well it pushes the stretch of the pose. I'm thinking squash and stretch essentially. And if everything's stretching, I want the shoulders to stretch down as well. If they come up, everything's going up, and it takes away from that feeling of exaggeration because we're moving in the same direction. So it's just gonna help exaggerate certain things. Okay, now let's think of one last one we could do here. Something different. So we did tired, surprised. Let's see. Oh, Studio Library. That's a great plugin. It basically allows you to have facial poses and things set up, which Apollo does have by default. He does have a Studio Library plugin, which I like to use when I'm working on a production to speed things up. But I'm not a fan of when I'm doing facial tests, because this is me learning how to do faces and like refining them. If I'm using a Studio Library, it's not a bad thing, but at least for me, I like to feel, or I like to try and shape it all and get a handle of it myself. It's part of what I want to practice. Disgusted, angry, that could work. It's definitely more interesting, and it kind of adds that compression. Yeah, let's do that. Kind of maybe let's do a combination, disgusted and angry, kind of like a just no thank you kind of thing. Let's see, talking about Studio Library, can we use the one on AM for our shots, or it's better we do on our own? You can use the one on AM. The big thing with Studio Library, it is not a final pose. If you're using Studio Library to put a facial pose on there, it is a starting point. Once you put that in there, you want to change it up and make it your own. If you're just clicking, okay, happy face, boop, go on, next one, boop, just hit a button and you animate your whole shot like that, that is going to just get you terrible results. It's essentially a way to just get your pose in a position that you want to begin with, but then from there you build it into something else. And it is fine to use for your assignments, yes. Once again, as long as you're posing it out. It's essentially similar to using like a tween machine to put in-betweens in. You can use it, but if you're just hitting tween and then calling it a day, you're essentially just shooting your shot in the foot and just killing it. You're going to get terrible results. If you're just using Studio Library and just hitting the button, apply, put it in and move on, it'll be there, but it's not going to look good. It's just a starting point. I've seen so many shots get lost and kind of ruined because of that. Same with tween machine. So let's go disgusted, angry, and what did you say kind of pose? Yeah, like we kind of push it a little bit more. This way we have some visual contrast here. So let's go with angry. Now here we can push once again that squash and stretch feeling. So we'll bring the arms down, but this time the clavicles will go up. And when you're angry, your shoulders kind of go up, and it depends on the type of angry. Let's kind of up and forward just a little bit, so it contrasts a little bit with the surprised. Go with this one. Let's see. The Naruto cringe. We could try, yeah. So this is actually something that I like to do. It's an exercise that's kind of fun. We've done it before on the streams where we took memes and just made faces out of them. But take a pose from a cartoon. It doesn't have to be live action. Take a pose from a cartoon and see if you can recreate it on the rig. Don't try to copy it, because the proportions of face are different. Like you can see here, he's got a very round face, whereas Apollo has this very long face. So we don't want to copy it. The brows are all different, but we can try to get it as close as possible and get the same feeling in there. So let's see, a question on Tween Machine. When you're using Tween Machine, are you making breakdowns of the whole process or the individual controls in my poor camera? Usually I use it, my main use of Tween Machine is on the whole pose. So if I ever use it, it's to kind of quickly put a breakdown in that I can shape afterwards, and my camera should come back soon. There you go. So it's just like, okay, I need an in-between, boop, put it in, and then from there rework it. That way I don't have to move everything from scratch. I like that. Other times I'll use it just on an individual control if I just need a breakdown on that one control. But yeah, it's a starting point, and you can use it for a whole pose or an individual control or a bunch of controls, whatever you need. The big thing is just making sure you don't let it dictate your animation. So if he's angry, the neck will come forward again. Now let's see. I'm debating whether I should do the Naruto cringe or the anger that I wanted, specifically because the anger will lower the angle of the head, which is going to be different than what we've had before, where everything's kind of up. But at the same time, not bad. It would be forward more. So he's kind of squinting at it. So if he's squinting, his shoulders wouldn't be up so high. I'm going to relax them a little bit. Let's kind of bring them back. The neck, let's push it forward just a little bit more. Angle of the head. Don't worry about getting the angle perfect. Just get it like at a starting point. If you get it exactly perfect where you want it right from the start, that's not going to happen, because as you pose out the face, you're going to be able to refine the angles a little bit better. So let's kind of get that in there for now. Let's see. Kind of wanted a contrast here, but honestly it's fine. I wanted the angle maybe this way, but for now we'll keep that. Now we've got that Naruto squint, so we're going to start with the brows. So brows, let's push it quite a bit here. Now this is where we have to be careful. If he is angry, we're going to have this cut across the eye there. But we don't want that. We want to squint. So we don't want the brow overlapping on top. Push this in a little bit. This will start getting us those wrinkles and that compression feeling. Brows, when they come down, they don't just go down, they go in. So we'll get that. Create some offset in the brow. So all of a sudden that helps quite a bit. We're going to shape everything a little bit more later. Let's push the irises and pupil down a little bit to capture that same energy. And then let's add the squint in here. So for a squint, just take the eyelids down. So we got whoop, like this. Now, we're going to refine this a little bit later, but the thing that really helps to sell a squint is the line around the eye and the cheeks. Like this, it doesn't really feel like a squint because the lower lid, that's too thick there. The lower lid is still very visible there. You can really see it here. So what we want to do is raise this up like that. This is what's going to help sell the squint. It's the cheeks pushing up right through there. Otherwise, he feels too relaxed. But for now, I'm just going to do a very base pose. That way we can kind of compare. The nose is actually going to come up a little bit. Let's shrink that down and like kind of flare out the nostrils a little bit. Gonna get that angle there. Now he's got this hook nose, so we're gonna be careful there how far we push this. Raise the head a little bit more. And let's get the mouth shape in there. So mouth is going to be open and kind of closed. We ended up doing a lot of closed mouth shots today, which I don't mind, honestly. When we've done facial poses in the past, we've done a lot of big open mouth poses, so this is kind of nice. And already I'm just going to try to think of the asymmetry, where that corner of the mouth is coming in a little bit more and maybe a little lower. Okay. And let's see, do I want to put it up a little bit more? Yeah. Let's scrunch up the face. Really get everything kind of coming into there. Okay. So we've got the start of the face. Great. We can call it there. Done. But does it look good? Not really. There's a lot of things that don't really work. So what can we start with? Well, let's start with the eyes and the brows. That's usually a good place to start. The eyes and the brows, the thing that's kind of not working right now is that the eyes feel very even, the way they're squinting. And then the brows just kind of have a boring shape to them. So let's kind of focus on the eyes first. What I'm going to try to do with the eyes, once again, is just a little bit of shaping. Try to offset that curve. It's very slight, but you can see the difference between that and that on this view. It's very slight, but you feel that curve. I'm laughing so hard. Yay, that's the best. We can push the corner here. Now, this depends on what kind of squint you're doing. If you're doing a squint where it's like, what's that? That's the outside of the edges, outside of the eyes squinting down because the cheeks are pushing up here. If you're doing a sneer of like, oh my God, what, like that anger in there, that's the inside kind of pushing up. So this is where we can start to exaggerate certain things. I can kind of push the line up a little bit more right here. Just a little bit, or kind of simplify it. In this case, I kind of want to keep it simple because the eyes are going to be so small. I don't want to lose them. But let's kind of pinch the corner here just a little bit. Eyes don't zip like with the mouth, but you can still kind of get a little bit of that pinch there. I'm going to try to straighten that top lid just a little bit. Okay. So, Tara, thanks for the reminder. Okay. Let's go to the other eye super quick. So, same thing. Let's shape it a little bit. Just a little bit of shaping, but it helps a lot. And I can kind of open this one up just a little bit more. Just a little bit. And let's try this. I could even rotate the eyes, and there goes my camera. It's overheating a little bit, so I'm just going to turn off the camera for now and let it rest. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to rotate the eyes. So what this is going to do is, without changing the shape of the eyelid, which we never want to do, when you have your eyelid, so something like this, you don't want to change the top lid. You don't want that to be wavy, or else things look really weird. Instead, what you can do is tilt the eye. That way you still get that nice line right there without affecting it too much. Now, I don't want to go too far with this because very quickly you can start getting off model in weird ways. So it's just going to be ever so slightly. Let's actually reset this here and here. Is just ever so slightly to get the corners a little higher. Just a little. You can kind of see that in the close-up. How it starts to kind of push the anger just a tiny bit. Blue shell, that's dependent on the rig. This rig has the crow's feet and all of that kind of built in, which is really nice. Okay, so we've got that. Let's push the shape of the lower lid. So this is where we're really going to start getting that squint right in here. And I want to push the squint so that it's a little bit more on the inner edge. So all of the lines are kind of coming into the center point of the nose here. So you can see that line that's getting created there, that line that's getting created there. I'll draw it out after here. So let's push that up. Maybe this one's going to be a little less, so we have some visual contrast there. And then the inner, push that up a little bit more there. So essentially, I want all my lines to be doing this. All coming into the nose right there. Even the sneer. Everything's going into that one point. That's what helps push that anger. I feel like this brow could be pushed down a little bit more. So let's work on the brows a little bit. I want to push the shape of it. Kind of get a little bit more kind of confusion in there. Something like that. I wonder if I can push the head angle. Yeah, you can definitely see how that's starting to get a lot angrier just by tilting it down. Whereas here we're still kind of in that like, what? Kind of expression. Let's tilt the head this way. Just a I'm torn. I like both. I'm going to push it a little straighter here, a little bit more this way. That way it contrasts with the last pose here. Okay. Now, one thing I do want to do is I want to push the eyes to be a little bit more centered. So it looks like he's looking at something a little closer to him than further away. The more your eyes separate, so if your eyes are doing... Come on, select. There we go. If your eyes are doing this, you're looking further away. The more they cross, the more you're looking at something close up. Now, let's push the cheeks up a little bit. Get that refined kind of connection in there. Essentially, I want to feel the cheeks in here. See how you can feel that mask going up? We want to feel that. Otherwise, it doesn't look quite like he's sneering. Okay. Are you going to animate the poses or just pose test? I'm going to animate between these poses at some point. I was thinking of maybe next week, but I'm not sure if I want to do a few more poses. And then that way we have more choices to animate between, or if we're just going to go straight into the animation. We'll see. But the whole goal of these is to animate between them at some point. Now here, if we really want to show that disgust, let's kind of bring that mouth corner up there. I'm kind of playing around with my shapes here, seeing which side I want to be a little bit higher. If I'm thinking of the contrapposto, the screen left side should be a little bit higher, but it's not a necessity, especially if I rotate the mouth like this. That way we still get the contrapposto, but the right side is just a little bit higher, screen right. I don't want to keep the mouth really narrow. Let's drop that bottom lip a little bit. Just a little. I'm kind of watching the shape here. The top here is feeling a little flat. So if I look at the line here and then the line there, it kind of just feels flat and boring. So I'm going to lower this on this side here. Watch the mouth corners, make sure they don't line up. I think I could maybe push them down a little bit. So we kind of get a little bit more of that kind of disgust in there and that simple curve on this side. Let's play around with the zip just a little bit to tighten those corners. So something like that. Maybe move the mouth over to the side just a little bit more. Up a little bit. Something like that. What else can we push here? We could, I haven't really pushed this on this rig, but the puff controls, we could kind of sink in the cheeks just a little bit. Something like that. Okay, the eyes are, there's something about them that I'll have to go back to. But let's take this. Let's make another version here. This is something I do like to do even in animations, is just make a couple versions. That way I can compare the face and make bigger changes. It's usually easier to do when you're in step mode. Now for the mouth, the first thing I want to do is simplify the shape. So take out the teeth there. Top teeth, do we need to see them? I think so. I like the feeling you get from them. They are kind of feeling a little flat, so I'm going to angle them a little bit. We get a little bit of a curve. And then the tongue, oops, that's the teeth. The tongue, we can see a little bit, but I want to make sure, I never called it this, but I love the term, the hills of the tongue. That little bump right there, try to see that a little bit. And let's push a little bit of an angle right in there. Think of it in a 2D way. And I could even, let's see, I could just fill it up right like that too. Yeah, let's do that. I feel like it gives a better silhouette of the mouth. It makes it feel like his mouth is a little bit more active versus being slack-jawed. They're both good. Like, that is fine, but I kind of like that as well. Okay, we've pushed that. What else can we exaggerate? Well, one thing I feel is that the nose is a little even. So I'm going to push the nostril here on this side up a little bit so we really get that sneer in there. Let's see, flare. Yeah, let's flare out the nostril on that side. This side, we can do a little bit, but let's just do a tiny little flare. It's hard to flare just one nostril. I wish I could get a little bit of a deeper, let's see, can I do this? The nasofold, I wish I could get just a little bit more of it in here, but I don't know if there's a control for that. So the nasofold is that line that runs from your nostril down. See, I didn't even know I would want a puff control. I would love to see a list of all the possible controls a rig could have. Oh, there's so many. And it really just depends on the rig. Like, certain rigs will have certain controls. Sometimes they're just named differently. Other times it's just a whole different range. Yeah, which way do I want to kind of push the jaw? Probably this way to kind of push the curve around like that. I think I could push that line of the bottom lip just a little bit more, like so. Now for the eyes, let's see where I can push them. I kind of want a little bit more of a line right here. So it essentially, I want to break up this evenness of the lids, the lower lids especially. So by pushing that up, we're going to help push that sneer. Essentially what's happening is the cheek muscles right here are pushing up on the lid in the corner and pressing it up. This is one of the few times when you're going to be shaping the lid like this. Let's push the skin here down a little bit so we get a little bit more shaping and we start getting a tiny bit of overlap and it doesn't feel so hollow right in here. So same thing, push this up a bit. Let's shape this just a tad. Try to push the unevenness of the lids here. Now I'm gonna just play around with the angle of the eyes again. Yeah, so that's default. You can see he looks kind of sad. So one thing I like to do, whenever you're trying to deal with a control that's very subtle, just crank it up and down like way too much so it just breaks the rig. That way you kind of reset your eye from what the pose was supposed to look like at default. And then from there, you can go in and find a pose that actually works and you're not just kind of just resetting it back to where it was. Oh, take care, Jahil. Have a great day. I feel like this eye could be open just a little bit more, just to offset the eyes. They feel a little too samey right now. So something like that. Let's take the eyes and see if we can scale them. Make them just a little smaller. Okay. And then what else can we do? Well, we've got the stretch control, so let's play around with that. So let's squash the head here. We can kind of bring it forward to help push that squash in there. Then to the side to help push our line of action. Same thing with the chin. Gonna squash that in just a little bit. And then this, let's see what we can do with this. We could really push this, like, ugh. Yeah, so once again, what I'm doing here is I'm just cranking it back and forth, so that way I can get into a new position that I'm not kind of, my eyes aren't going, oh no, but this was the normal one. I can get an expression that works for this. Let's kind of push that line of the face there to really get that exaggerated line there. I kind of feel like I could push the mouth a little higher. Something like that. Now I want to watch the silhouette of the mouth here. See how we can, the teeth are kind of touching the tongue and tangenting. That's not great. So I want to simplify that. Okay. I think let's do this. I kind of like that feeling a little bit more. Just the tongue being in there just slightly. Okay. So let's call it done for now. Actually, there's one last thing I want to do. I want to push this down here. We were seeing a little too much upper lid right there. Right in here. Well, actually, no, I actually like that. Let's play with that a little bit. It adds contrast to both eyes. There we go. So that's our face. Let's see. I understand it depends on the rig, but I think knowing what is possible in a rig helps in judging how well developed a rig is when buying one. Yes. That's why I like to do the rig reviews where we can dive in and look at all the different controls, find out what works, what doesn't. Actually, I realized I totally forgot to translate the lips inwards. This is something I always try to do, is look at your lip roll and your translation. Don't just let them sit at default, because our lips actually puff out quite a bit and they kind of they roll in, they translate out. So really watch that. Don't let yourself fall into just leaving them at their default here. Okay, so we've got something like that. I think I can maybe push the shoulders a little bit more. So let's call that done for now. So we have the rig set up here. Let's see where it started. So it started with this. We got a little bit of the squint, kind of there. We pushed it a little bit more, but you can see it got more intense, definitely, but it's still kind of flat. And then here, this is where we really started exaggerating it. So really pushing it. Now let me actually try something. This is what I like about having old versions, is now we can kind of see, the thing that I noticed is that the head angle, I feel it kind of works better this way. I feel it just kind of flows better with the body. So I kind of want to exaggerate that just a little bit more. Maybe have him look out of the corner of his eyes just a little bit more. I don't know. It just feels... they both feel good in different ways. I'm not sure. There's differences that I like in each. I think we'll keep this one here, just because it's a bigger contrast to that. So we get from there to there. Yeah, that feels better. Let's get rid of this key. Boop. There we go. So now we've got our poses. So we've got our tired, which now we're looking at this. I feel like we could push the brows even more. Just really push that down. Get that fatigue in there. This is why it's a good idea to just go back and forth. Don't just work on one pose and then try to get it perfect. Move on to the next one. See how you can exaggerate it and then come back. Because now we can really start pushing these a lot more. Let's take the mouth corners. Take a little bit of that puff and sink them in. Basically make them look like death. I feel like the mouth corners could probably drop a little bit more. Just kind of let him just feel like he's half dead, essentially. There we go. So from there to there. Yeah, you can definitely feel that fatigue now. This is going, yeah, exactly. This is going from fatigue to like barely surviving. Maybe we should pull it back just a little bit. Otherwise he'll look like he's about to pass out. Yeah, something like that for now. We've got our tired, to our surprised, to our Naruto cringe pose. Not quite the same, but let's see. I wonder if I can... I'm going to try to push the neck pose a little bit. Kind of have him pull back, and maybe I can even add a little bit of like the chest here so we feel that kind of pull back. Ugh. everything's going back away versus, let me actually bring the neck forward here to feel that change. Whew. So he goes from here to here, here.